Hi, everyone, and welcome to Let's Talk Risk, where our goal is to engage, inspire, and empower the global community of risk practitioners. I'm your host, Naveen Agarwal, and today I'm super excited to welcome our colleagues outside the United States, especially in South Asia and Southeast Asia. And I have a wonderful guest today to talk about the environment for MedTech in this region. He is Mr. Sanjay Arudi, who is the VP of Regulatory and Quality at GE Healthcare in India. In a career spanning more than 25 years, Sanjay has seen the evolution of medtech in India from a front row seat. So I can't really wait to get started with this conversation with Sanjay and learn what is going on in that region, which is seems to be growing so fast. So Sanjay, with that, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey Naveen, thank you for inviting me to Let's Talk Risk. I'm doing good and I'm really excited about our conversation today. But prior to getting there, I want to thank you and congratulate you on this wonderful initiative where you create a community of professionals within healthcare industry where you promote dialogue and provide learning opportunities from each other. So thank you and congratulations on that.
Thank you so much, Sanjay, and you're welcome. I truly enjoy it, and we are learning so much from each other. So, Sanjay, I want to start by asking you to give us the latest state of affairs. What's happening on the ground as far as MedTech is concerned?
Okay. India MedTech itself, currently we are looking at 50 billion of revenue generation by the year 2030. So that's just about 5 years from now. If you look at the overall healthcare industry itself, healthcare industry is projected around 630 to 640 billion for 2025, and this is mainly driven by factors such as demand for healthcare services. There is a lot of government initiatives and support which are going on. And then there are also increased investments. And these investments, especially we are seeing post COVID, there is a lot of healthcare spending coming from the private. And all this is pretty much contributing to that. And as you also know, India is also the country with the highest population with about a 1.4 billion. And this basically means that healthcare needs to grow and will continue to grow in the coming years. A
Mhm.
few things which I'm sure you're aware is also the insurance scheme that has been introduced by the government of India a couple of years back, I think 2 to 3 years back, where they covered insurance up to 5 lakh Indian rupees for per person. Whoever was in the below poverty level, it did not cover the entire sector, but it covered a certain section of people. So that was a start. Now, in the last 1 year, it has been extended to senior citizens who are aged 70 and above. So that is the second step. So the government is also trying to do their bit in terms of providing healthcare support to people who need it. And up to this point, as you know, it was always out of pocket. And then the other thing which is happening is the production linked incentive, which the government is providing. And there are a few target segments that have been identified, and these are, say, cancer care, radiotherapy related devices, radiology and imaging devices, then anesthesia, cardiorespiratory, catheters for cardiorespiratory category, renal care, and then implants. So these
Mhm.
are four to five major categories of equipments which the Indian government wants Indian manufacturers to develop. And as
Mhm.
you may be aware, about 80% of medical devices in India were being imported, and
Mhm.
Indian government is now pushing to increase the domestic manufacturers through
Mhm.
providing these incentives. So this, at a high level, is what the
Yeah.
Indian health environment looks like
And when
currently.
you're describing the government programs for insurance, this is exactly what I was thinking is that 80 to 85% of the medical products are imported in India, a country so large, more than a billion people. And I was imagining that because of that, maybe healthcare access is a problem, cost is a problem. So to me, it seems like the environment is right with the government support, with the investment coming in. to strengthen the domestic manufacturing base. Am I understanding the situation right there?
Yes, you are exactly right. There is a lot that needs to be done, but a start has been made, and the government is very intent on expanding this as much as possible. And that is what we are seeing, both in terms of trying to increase the umbrella under which the coverage is provided, and
Mhm.
also the investments, the increased investments that we can see, plus also the investments in terms of incentives to domestic manufacturers. So we are seeing all this triangulate, and hopefully there will be a larger push in the coming years.
So, 50 billion in 5 years is actually a pretty significant number. And as you mentioned, compared to the global medical device industry, it is nearing about 10%. And that is pretty ambitious and aspirational. And I'm imagining, Sanjay, let me know what you think, is that this also includes India's aspiration to be also a net exporter of medical technology, not just producing products for the domestic market. Am I reading that right?
Yes, so there are a couple of things. One is you make in India and you make in India for the world. Make in India for the Indian market, plus you also have markets which are especially the neighboring countries and some of the emerging markets that you have across the world. And the reason why I'm talking very specifically about emerging markets is because you have different categories of products, right? You have the premium products, and then you have the value products, and you have the performance products. So different kinds of products depending on the capabilities. You could have the best in class premium product, but an emerging market is not one which could afford the best in class.
Mhm.
It can afford the best in class, not that it cannot, but
Mhm.
with more than having one best in class equipment, probably you could have 10 which are
Mhm.
like the value and the performance, which deliver what the country needs, which delivers what the government and what the environment of the country requires. So keeping these economic factors also in mind, India's main aim has been towards the performance and the value markets, value
Mhm. Mhm.
segments, if you can call them. So there are a lot of emerging markets across the world which will also be target markets for these products.
Mhm.
And getting the CDSCO license to be able to sell in India is just one part of it, because CDSCO is pretty much harmonized with many of the developing countries' regulations. So, which means if
Mhm.
you have a CDSCO license, you can pretty much use a similar dossier to get entry into
Mhm.
many of the other markets as well. So
Mhm.
yes, the regulation happening in India over the last 3 years or so, 3 to 4 years, it will also play a really big role in increasing the confidence of the buyer, be it
Yeah.
the government or be it the private sector. That is also helping in a big.
That makes sense. And we will go into the regulatory aspects in just a little bit, Sanjay. I have one more question from the macroeconomic perspective, and that's all about tariffs. We know so much is going on, and it's dynamic, it's fluid. We don't know what's going to happen. Can you say just very briefly how it is impacting the medical industry in India and the surrounding region?
So at this point, there are not many knowns, I would say. There are more unknowns than knowns. So if you look at any manufacturer, most manufacturers are expecting that, the tariffs are going to increase the cost of the product that reaches the end customer. Plus, it might also create some barriers to enter some of the markets. There are these conversations that are happening between the US and China, but then there will also be other countries and other manufacturers in other countries which will also get impacted, because a lot of this will be reciprocal. So I would say more unknowns at this point, and everyone is bracing for a tougher second half of 2025 is all I can say at this point. And hopefully there
Yeah.
will be some things which will get resolved, and we might see a better situation. But right now everyone's bracing for hard second half of 2025.
Hard second half, hard second half. Yes, that's exactly what I'm hearing also from many of the US based companies, which are truly global companies, and they're really expecting that kind of an impact. All right, Sanjay. So let's jump into it. You briefly mentioned that the regulatory environment in India for medical devices has also evolved. Give us a very quick summary of where we are and how it aligns with the international regulatory requirements.
Okay, so I would like to say that the India Medical Device Rules 2017 got published in 2017, which is why it's called the IMDR 2017. But there were a lot of consultative activities that were happening with the industry about 3 to 4 years prior to that. I think 2013, 2014 is when there was a lot of activity that was happening between CDSCO and the industry, and there were many recommendations that we were making so that the regulation, when it comes, is not only friendly to the industry, but also has the compliance to that also means product safety and efficacy. So that was the ask from the industry, something easy to implement at the same time. When implemented, it is something which is safe for the user, safe for the patient, and at the same time high efficacy in terms of the product and reliability. So that is one thing that we were looking at. The From the CDSCO perspective, while they were having the conversation with the industry, they were also working as part of the then AHWP, the Asian Harmonization Working Party, and now it's called GSWP, Global Harmonization Task Force, GHTF, and the GSWP, and they were working with many of the other regulators from developed countries as well. And finally, the regulation which came out as India Medical Device Rules was, I would say, harmonized to a very great extent with the developed countries. So, which is why I mentioned earlier, if you are able to, prepare a dossier to meet the CDSCO requirements and get a license, you can pretty much use the extracts of the same dossier to get a license anywhere else. So CDSC was started implementing the regulation in 2020, and they started with some imaging and radiology equipment to start with. And over a period of next 4 years, they introduced other medical devices as well through notifications. The next 4 years, up by 2024 April, all medical devices in India were regulated. We had different, it also depended on classification. It depended on what the regulator CDSCO knew in terms of the risk that the particular product brought to the market or to the end user. So there were a lot of factors that were considered. And keeping all this in mind, they used to release these notifications. And over a period of time, everything is regulated at this point, including the Class A devices.
Very nice.
And when a country goes from being non-regulated to a regulated, there is a steep learning curve. So we did
Yeah.
go through some of these conversations initially by 20 from when it started from 2020, both industry as well as the regulators both learning. And over a period of time, now we have reached a spot where the pre-market regulations, I would say, are pretty much smooth.
Yeah.
We know how to make a submission. The regulator knows what to look for, what to look at, and how can they determine with the safety and the efficacy of the product, and then you get a license. If
Right.
you do not, then there is something that is inherently wrong in the submission that has been made, or something not very clear, and hence you get queries back and forth. So that has been our experience. In the 4 years, there's been a steep learning curve, and more or less the approvals have become pretty much smooth now. Of
Oh,
course,
very
there
good.
will also be some issues in terms of resource constraints or whatever, but not anything related to the submissions itself.
Yeah, yeah, that's very exciting to hear. What comes to mind really is, when you are right. When you starting at such an early stage, there's so much to learn, so much to learn. Now, I'm thinking that when it comes to pre-market, of course, we have a lot of work to do. Design and development, developing our technical documentation, submitting to the regulatory authorities, getting the approval and clearance. But that's only the first step in going to the market, right? We still have to figure out how to maintain safety and effectiveness in the marketplace. So I want to get into post market in just a minute. But guys, if you're joining us just now, my guest today is Sanjay Arudi, who is the VP of Regulatory and Quality at GE Healthcare in India. And we are talking about the rapidly evolving MedTech environment in India and what's happening there on the ground. So if you have any questions, comments, any perspectives to share, please do that in the chat and I will bring that up for our discussion. Let's make this very interactive. This is not a webinar or a lecture. This is just a conversation. So Sanjay, let's continue our conversation and jump into now the post-market phase. As we know, when products go into the marketplace, we learn a lot more and there are adverse events. There are some reporting requirements. Help us understand where we stand on that aspect of regulatory oversight in India for post-market.
Okay, so the Indian medical device rules have the requirements for both adverse event reporting and field safety corrective actions. Both are pretty much in there. But the focus up to this point was mainly on the pre-market. So the regulators have now started looking at some of the post-market requirements as well and implementing, because it's a timely, considering that by April 2024 is when all medical devices had been covered. So now we see whenever we report an either an adverse event or when we report a safety corrective action, we see questions coming in from the regulator. So, by wanting to understand a bit more, trying to understand what is the root cause, what kind of actions are you putting in
Mhm.
place, how many impacted units do you have in the country, which other country have you reported this event to. So we
Mhm.
keep getting a lot of these questions. So they are also trying to understand a bit more, and which probably they did not have the bandwidth to do over the last 3 years. The first set of devices were already effective around the October 2020 timeframe. But whatever reporting we did at that point, we never really got any questions, because they were, I am assuming, occupied with all the submissions that had happened, and the need to provide licenses so that there would be no impact to business continuity. But now
Mhm.
that they have done all that, now we see that the regulator is also asking more questions around trying to get more information, trying to understand it better, and trying to see if the actions that we are putting in place is effective and so on. So this is something we are seeing. And I'll be honest, the post-market requirements are also in India not very, very different from what you see in the rest of the world. When we have an adverse event reporting and field safety corrective actions to be reported, these are the
Mhm.
two main things, just like you have in any other developed market. And when you have an adverse event, it needs to be reported within 15 days from being aware of the incident. And you
Mhm.
can file a preliminary report with, the minimal or the optimal information you have at that point in time. Because, as you know, there is an investigation that needs to happen, a probable root cause that needs to be arrived at. We need to
Mhm.
determine whether it could be attributed to the device, or it could be attributed to the user training and so on, or
Mhm.
it could be something else also. It could even be the environment that caused it. But there is a need to understand what caused the event, and then do a root cause analysis for that,
Mhm.
and if need be, implement any actions related to that. It could be a corrective action, it could be a change in design, or it could be as simple as a user training that is needed because the
Mhm.
user was not trained, and then we need to help the
Mhm.
user understand. It could be something, it could be related to a label that we put on a product, additional caution label that may be
Mhm.
required, or making the user manual more easier to understand. There could be a wide variety of
Yeah.
actions. You need to
Yeah.
go through all that. So once you complete that, you go back and close it out with a final report. And in between, the one or two questions that you could probably get from the regulator is, and trying to understand what is the timeline you're looking at, what are the containment actions that you have so that it does
Mhm.
not happen anywhere. So these kind of questions, which is showing their concern about how do we keep things under control while giving time to the manufacturer to make sure
Mhm.
that the right actions are implemented. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what we are seeing at this point in time.
So it seems like the overall structure, the thought process, the way to handle post-market adverse events reporting and follow-up actions is very similar to what is there in, let's say, more mature markets like the US or in the EU. One question I had for you, Sanjay, is it still so far a manual process right now? Communication between regulators and industry in India, or are they also creating some automated systems whereby databases can offer reporting on adverse events to the common public, just like the FDA has the MOD database? How are things progressing in this area?
So as far as the pre-market is concerned, everything is automated.
Okay.
There is nothing, there is no hard copy documentation. But for the post-market requirements, this is something that is work in progress, and we hope to have a website that is available where we report. In fact, right at this point, we do the reporting to two agencies. One is the India Pharmacopoeia Commission, and the second is we also put a copy to the DCGI for medical devices. So there is a plan to get a single online reporting tool in the coming days. We do not know the timelines, but that is something that is work in progress.
Okay, great. I think that'll definitely help facilitate not only the reporting, but also information to the public. Because one thing that being in the US, I have really appreciated from the FDA, and I use that information in my case studies that I publish on Let's Talk Risk. All the information is publicly available about recalls, about warning letters, and you can understand what is going on. And FDA has also now started publishing early alerts to inform the public, inform the doctors. So this is an example of a mature system, and I have no doubt that the system will mature in India very, very quickly to get to that stage. Now, Sanjay, GE Healthcare is a very established global mature company, right? Tell us a little bit more about what unique challenges you are facing right now in your environment when it comes to really complying with this rapidly evolving regulatory environment in India.
Okay, so I have been in this role. That was my previous role, actually. I've just moved on to more of the central quality and regulatory organization. But one of the challenges which I used to face was we have a huge difference in the level of understanding between a mature market or a mature regulator with a developing regulator, someone who's introduced a regulation trying to get them understand and help them with a lot of help them scale up and help them build competencies, something that we in GE Healthcare have been working for a long time, and we try to help out regulators, be it in terms of conducting trainings, sharing best practices which are available with some of the other developed markets. So we do a lot of that. When a country becomes regulated for the first time, it is always a challenge, because many times with the regulators also, they would have probably had some classroom sessions, they would have had some training. But when they actually have to start looking at a document, when they start looking at the dossiers, that is when you start when you start doing things yourself, that is when you start getting a lot of should it be this way or should it be that way? And that is
Yeah.
where a lot of things go back and forth, a lot of queries come our way, and you need to have a lot of conversations. So we as G Healthcare have always tried to develop the relation with the regulator, help them provide them with some amount of training, share our experiences that we've had with some of the other mature regulators, and help them come up to speed. This is something we have always done.
This is a very, very fascinating insight. And I'm really glad that you mentioned this, Sanjay, because I heard exactly the same thing from Akram Sheikh, who was my guest, I think, a month ago or so on this program. And Akram is also a leader in the MedTech industry in India. And he shared with me the same thing, that we have to work collaboratively with regulators because they are coming up to speed. They don't have all the understanding of the practical implications of these regulations. We have to help them, and we have to see them as collaborators and not as someone that we should be afraid of. And I know, Sanjay, that takes a change in the mindset. I know that. But having that empathy towards your regulator is actually a fresh concept, and to me, very refreshing. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm really excited that you brought that up. Sanjay, I know we have only a few minutes left, but I want to switch gears for just a bit. And I want to use this opportunity to learn a little bit from your distinguished career, which has spanned over 25 years, many, many positions of leadership, and you have done so well. Can you help us? Can you share with us just a few key kind of pivotal moments that have shaped your career history and any advice you might have for all of us?
I think the first and foremost, if you ask me, that is the say-do ratio for anyone to progress in their career. You commit on something, be it the activity itself and the timing and the quality. When something is given to you, if you are able to deliver in a timely manner with a high quality of output, automatically you do get recognized. People understand that, okay, here is someone who is different from the others. And this is something I have been seeing in any leader in the organization, whose careers have really gone, who have really taken off, gone a long way. That is, I would say, really, really important. The other thing is, what do you bring to the table? You may not be an expert in everything, but when you're part of a conversation, when you're part of a meeting, the very reason that you're called for a meeting is that you are able to contribute. Otherwise, there is no point being at the table. So when you're at the table, you need to bring in your expertise, or you need to bring in, apply logic, and ask the right questions, and put across your thoughts and contribute. That becomes very important. You need to be seen as someone who is a contributor. The third thing I would see is when we are especially in a quality and regulatory environment, it is very easy to be labeled as someone who is a roadblock. You actually need to be seen as someone who gives solutions, someone who removes the roadblocks ahead. Instead of just saying no, you need to tell them how can it be done. That
Hmm.
makes a lot of difference. That makes people come to you for solutions. That makes people listen to you tomorrow when you tell them that this cannot be done. However, why don't we try one, two, three,
Hmm.
and this probably can make us do it while also complying with the requirements of the ISO standards or the regulations of the land. That
Hmm.
is, you need to be seen as a solution provider. So these are, I think, the two, three things that really would be helpful to help make progress in your career.
That's fantastic, Sanjay. Thank you for sharing that with us. I sort of agree with you 100%. And I think that quality regulatory folks, our colleagues, have a very strategic role to play, especially in a rapidly moving environment everywhere. Economic environment is changing, regulatory environment is changing. So we can be actually playing a very strategic role. So on that very high note, Sanjay, I want to give you a couple of minutes to just think about a few key takeaway points we can share with our audience today. And guys, in the meantime, I want to share only a few announcements with you. First of all, this particular session of Let's Talk Risk at this time is a very special session for particularly for our audience outside the US and the EU time zones. Because generally we meet every week at 11 a.m. Eastern time in the United States on Fridays. And that's our weekly rhythm. We have done that for 2 years. Over 100 podcast episodes have been published now. And if you want to join those conversations, you are welcome to. But I realize for many of our colleagues outside the United States and EU time zones, it is not very convenient. And that is exactly why we want to do it at an hour like this. So expect this to happen on a monthly frequency for now at this time, where I would love to have guests from the local regions, like my distinguished guest today, Sanjay, to talk about what's happening on the ground in that region. So if you want to come onto this show as a guest, you're welcome to. This is not a webinar or a lecture. This is just a conversation to help all of us understand the environment and how we can contribute. So please reach out to me. I know many of you are joining today from the region. So if you are interested in participating as a guest, please reach out to me and I would really love to have you. The second thing I would tell you guys is that very recently I have launched a 4-hour hands on workshop that I offer via Zoom. This is a live workshop that will help you learn how to connect your FMEAs to risk assessments in the context of 14971. We have been told many, many times that FMEA is not sufficient for 14971 compliance, and I agree. But nobody tells you how to work with FMEAs and do something more in your current quality management system and a risk management system. And that's workshop is designed with hands-on activities to help you learn how to bridge the gap from FMEAs to 14971 risk assessment. So if you're interested, please reach out to me and I will share with you more information. With that, Sanjay, the floor is yours. Please share just a few key takeaway points with us.
Sure. Thank you, Naveen. India is currently the fourth largest economy along with Japan. And by 2027, we will be the third largest economy, moving ahead of Germany. So this is really, really significant. And while that is happening, as I mentioned earlier, there is a lot of investment that is happening in terms of the domestic manufacturing and the capabilities. And, post COVID, we also have the strategy of multiple locations. Many times it used to be a single location. So we have many manufacturers who are also starting manufacturing in India. It could not just be for the medical device, but even outside of medical devices. But manufacturing sector in India is going through, a huge uptick. And coming to the medical technology itself, as I said, India is poised, projecting at least at a minimum to reach 50 billion by 2030, which is about 5 years from now. So keeping all this in mind, this is the India is the right place to be in, especially if you are medical devices regulatory professional. So highly interesting times ahead of us. Coming to the post-market piece itself, at this point in time, it is considered that reporting an adverse event or uh, reporting safety corrective action that is being taken could probably be seen as negative. And this is something that happens as regulations develop, and it's not just in India. Other countries also have gone through the similar cycle when you just have a pre-market and then start looking at post-market. Reporting something in the public domain, reporting to the regulator can be seen as something that could be perceived as negative. But in fact,
Mhm.
it is not. It is important that you do the reporting because you are
Mhm.
creating the awareness to the end user. You're creating because ultimately, all of us work for patient safety. At the end of it, the end user does not know that there could be a potential hazard. It could
Mhm.
be it could lead to a fatality, or it could lead to a serious event, which is not anything any of us want. So it
Mhm.
is highly important for the medical device industry to be transparent about anything that is happening. Mistakes do happen. It is not a human error all the time. There could be
Mhm.
other factors as well which could lead to which could lead to an event resulting in a corrective action. So it's highly important to be transparent so that we avoid any future events that happen while taking actions which pretty much address the issue and make the product not only compliant but also safe for use
Yeah.
both for the patient as well as the end user. So with
Wonderful.
that, I would like to hand it back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I know we have a question here, but guys, unfortunately, we have run out of time. And I want to be respectful of your time. But I have taken note of the question from you, Yogeshwar, and we will address that in one of our future sessions. With that, I want to thank all of you for joining today. Thank you so much, Sanjay, for taking the time from your busy schedule and sharing these insights with us. I'm super excited about the environment in India and in the region around India. So I hope that our colleagues are too, and we can contribute, make a huge contribution to this rapidly evolving field. Thank you, everyone, and we will see you soon.